Hi, I'm pretty new to this area. This is Balaji here. What does mean by ASR and NLU? If you don't mind, can you abbreviate that?
Sure. Yeah, ASR is the speech recognition. So that's just the part that's taking your voice input and turning it into, usually into words. We'll say words for the purposes of this. And then the NLU is the natural language understanding. So that's the part that takes those words, which are probably not perfectly correct because the speech recognition isn't perfect, and figures out what you want to do. So, add milk to my shopping list. The ASR takes those sound waves, turns them into words, and then hands them off to the NLU and the dialogue that actually figure out what you wanted and then what they should do about it.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help? Yeah. Okay. So in the Git repo that Shyamala shared the link to, we have all the details of our assessment and the detailed categories that we used, the fine-grained categories we used. We group those into 3 major categories. Good means it was, an actually good answer if it was a question, or it did the right thing, it set your alarm, it added the thing to your shopping list, it gave you the weather, whatever it was you were trying to do. Usable meant it didn't exactly give you what you wanted, but you could find it or figure out how to do it based on the system's response. So often those are search results, right? So you ask something, the system doesn't actually know how to do it. It says, I found some search results for you. And if, in the ones that were displayed or presented in whatever modality were what you wanted, we counted that as usable, right? Or if it asked you a follow-up question, right? If you said set an alarm for 6 and the system said AM or PM, and then you say AM or PM and it does it, like that's, I forget if that might have been a good response, actually. I'll call it a good response. Debbie's nodding. Okay. Poor responses, obviously, didn't give you what you needed, didn't do what you needed. Pretty straightforward. So what you can see here is that there are 2 systems that are almost identical in performance. And I mean, somewhat better, not, astonishingly better than the other 3, but somewhat better than the other 3. And then, sort of a graceful decline over the other 3 systems in terms of what percentage of the inputs they were able to provide a good response to or a usable response to. What is interesting to me here is that really the difference lies in not so much in the poor category, because that's grossly similar, but in how much is pushed into this usable, i.e. usually just search results category in these worse performing systems compared to the 2 better performing systems, right? They have quite a narrow band of usable answers, and it's either good or it's poor, right? I should give you a little context before I show that one. The work that we did this year was a follow-up to some previous research that Debbie had done, similar task in 2016. We added some questions. We added a couple more systems because there were a few more that were mature enough that we thought it was fair to test them in this way. Again, we weren't trying to be cruel. We were trying to be, reasonable with what could be expected from these commercial systems. And so we thought, well, of course, I mean, millions of dollars, hundreds of people have been working on these for the last 4 years. Like, they must be a lot better than they were in 2016. But not so much, actually. And so this one, we only compared, obviously, like with like, the questions that we used both in 2016 and 2020, systems that were assessed in both years. And there's not much difference. And it really is that difference that I just talked about, where some of the mass is getting pushed out of this usable category with search results into an actually good response, and basically no change in the poor. And this just makes me wonder, like, what are all these people working on? Like, what do they do every day if they're not looking at this quite large bucket of genuinely poor responses. So this remain a mystery until one of us goes and works on one of these systems. And because the focus today is on negation, I'm not going to go through the slide in detail. I just want to give you the gist of it. But we did look at particular linguistic phenomena and the coverage for each of them. And the reason that we started with negation is that it is, one of the worst. It's the worst, along with the out of domain, which were things that we tried basically to see if the systems knew what they didn't know. Those were not inputs that the systems could be expected to answer reasonably, but it's important for a system to know its limits and admit defeat, as we called it. And so other than that, negation was the very worst performing category. And so that's why we've chosen to focus on this today. And, as I said, every session, we're going to pick something different to focus on. It may not always be a linguistic phenomenon. It may be something more like, electoral results, something that could be sort of controversial and need some special handling. And we want to see how the different systems handle those things. So we can spend a couple minutes discussing this. And at that point, we're going to break out, kind of on our own. Everybody go off and test a few examples with negation on whatever favorite assistant you have, on your desk or your phone. And then after those 10 minutes, we'll come back together and compare results and discuss them. So this is just, the parameters of the testing, most of which I think I've alluded to, ask reasonable questions in commonplace domains. Don't ask super weird stuff that it couldn't reasonably be expected to know. We don't care if it's text or speech input, both fair game. There's a Google document that Shyamala shared a link to, and we can put our examples in there. And then I think we have a small enough group, Shyamala, right? We can just unmute everyone and,
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So the Google Doc link is in the chat window. So if you have not checked your email, you can just go through that and then test it out. We'll mute ourselves and use any of our voice assistant, Google, Alexa, Siri, whatever we have. And then we are going to test out the different negations. So like Christy mentioned, go through all the different kind of things you want to test out for negations today, and then put it in there in the Google Doc.
Right.
And if you have any questions, just let us know.
Any thoughts, questions before we get started?
I don't see the link to the Google Doc in the chat. Was that?
Oh, okay. For people who joined late, I'm resending it again.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And, here's some hints, right? Lots of explicitly negative words, right? But then there are words that have negative meanings, like except, show me all the whatevers except for whatever. And then there are, these more complicated cases, like Debbie's example here. You say, I'm interested in broccoli, and the voice assistant says, are you trying to order broccoli? And you say, I bought broccoli yesterday. That's a no. And you probably want recipes, maybe because you just bought broccoli, or maybe you're like, wow, this is so delicious. I want to know how to grow my own broccoli. So this was, a reasonable follow-up question, but then it should, understand this as saying, no, I want to know something else about broccoli. And with that, again, free play time, and we'll come back together in a couple of minutes.
All right.
Oops.
Okay.
So yeah, if you could share the same negation screen for people, I think it will be really helpful for them to get some guidance on how to,
Okay. I'm going to just open the Google Doc myself, and then I'll go back to full screen. Okay. Okay, there we go.
Alexa, what is the largest city in Ireland except for Dublin?
The most populated city in Ireland near Dublin is Dublin at 553,000 people.
Okay, Google, what is the largest city in Ireland but not Dublin?
Whoa, we already have like 60 things in our spreadsheet.
Yep, this is fun. Actually, I think we can some more time. We have 30 minutes.
You think we should spend a few more minutes and then meet?
Yeah, this is a good number. I think 60 is a good number, and we can get a few more.
Clippy. Somebody tested Clippy. Awesome.
Oh, Clippy, I love that. Do we still have Clippy? Okay, 5 more minutes and then we can, come back and evaluate this. All right. I think we are 12:35 now, so I think yeah, we can talk about things now.
Oh my God, the Siri, the I hate bananas noted. I love that one so much.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, some of them are okay, right? Like there's some that are good, like the what do you not like? I'd much rather think of my favorite things. Like those are clearly handcrafted responses, right?
Yeah. Some are really nice. The others, I feel like a lot of, they have not put in a lot of thought for sure.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I would want others also to participate. So, yeah, what interesting thing did you find out? What do you feel about, the utterances, how they can be improved? Anything you want to talk about, feel free to.
Yeah. This is Balaji here. One, interesting fact that I found was I have a Google Home as well as my mobile with a Google Voice enabled. The interesting fact is when I asked a same question, will I have to take the umbrella? One thing suggested me that, hey, it shows me precisely on the location that I'm living. Another one gave me a very generic answer, probably this Saturday might be, raining, so you may have to carry an umbrella this week. And what should I do today? The same voice assistant, both Google, one said that you have to authenticate your voice. Another one showed me the calendar, or, another one showed me like, you can tell me what, couple of things that it showed me on the screen. But the same voice assistant with my same login, but both gave me a two different set of answers. Kind of weird. I don't know why.
Yeah, see, that is where all the assistants are designed separately, right? And they have different technologies. So going back to what Christy was saying, the speech recognition technology, or even the natural language understanding, which Deborah is an expert in. So definitely, it's all part of how the entire design was weaved in, how they have developed it. And that is why you see those, differences. And the other thing, what I feel is many people have not actually, like sometimes what happens is we go and a reactive approach, like, they don't test to this extent where they'll know like, oh, people may ask these kind of questions.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean there are other differences in for instance the dedicated hardware. There's like super fancy microphones in those, like that's most of what's in there, and so the speech recognition is going to be better for those, which shouldn't really matter for our task. But what might matter more is that those are designed to be multi-user devices. And also, I think they have to assume that, there are children in the house. And so multi-age, users, whereas a phone is a single person device and they can model you more specifically. So I think that, even if they share a bunch of underlying architecture with the NLU and the dialogue, you're still going to see differences in how they respond on the different platforms.
You might get a couple of different answers to the same question. For one reason might be they think that it would be fun not to say the same thing twice, especially some of those like smart alecky questions.
Right.
Like, do you like me? They would try to be different. And the other reason that you might get the same answer twice is sometimes I think they're smart enough to notice when you ask the same thing twice and say, okay, why was this? Maybe they didn't understand the first time.
Right.
Anything else from anyone?
I like the best curry that's non-spicy. That's a really good one. The non-adjective is a great category. And again, I feel like if I were a developer working on these, I would start to classify these things, like adjectives with non. Okay, do I handle the adjectives correctly? Then do I handle the non-adjectives? And really those are, you could say, you know, non-Japanese Asian food, right? Or, you know, what's the best curry that's not spicy? So like, you know, you probably would put those in the same bin. And like the don't know is interesting, right? I mean, that seems like a stock answer to I don't know, and then put anything after it, right?
Yeah, I love the answer too. It's a little philosophical, but then yeah, one can't know everything. They can't.
Of course, I don't know everything. That's why I'm asking you. Like, what? That's not helpful.
I mean, yeah.
And one more interesting pattern that I'm seeing, I mean, this is, I think everybody would have known. So if you have the Google Home with a screen display, so they are using both the platform to communicate what they are trying to say. So what should I eat? It says like, it says like you can eat this, and then it reference that with a photograph and the text and everything. No, it is not actually speaking out all the things that it is showing as part of that particular screen. So it gives me a heads up on what is that, and then followed by a set of information that get displayed on that screen actually. I mean, it is not that everything it is saying out. So I think, like you said, right now, the device also matter where you are going and asking the question, because they are trying to segregate that both, in terms of voice as well as in terms of the visual. So they are taking both the cues and they are trying to send out the information in both different category. I saw that actually.
Yeah. See, there are a couple of things there. Why, companies do that if they have screen is, this is multimodality, right? And one of the reasons why they do is there's a lot of cognitive load sometimes with certain things, when you're trying to give information. So for example, when I was talking with Alexa and I asked her, okay, I need to mute her first. Okay. So when I was asking her about, the planet and, which planet has the most moon, she was giving paragraph worth of information to me, which was a lot of overload for me because it was going on and on and on. And I was like, Alexa, stop, Alexa, stop. But she was not listening, right? So sometimes we have, a certain level of acceptance to what we want to or how much we can take at once. So it's a good strategy to have a balance, showing it something on the screen and also, a little bit through voice and all. But it also enables people, other people, who may not be able to hear what the assistant is saying. So, screen could be a very, very good channel there as well. So that is the reason.
Correct. I mean, I completely agree. The only thing from a multimodal aspect is it has no clue that, how far that I am from that particular device. Correct. You got to be on a, certain number of feet away from the device that you can read. If you sit beyond that, right, but still you have only one agent sitting there with a screen and with a voice, right? That particular device have no idea that I'm sitting far off and I'm asking a question, and it might have showing a very good set of information, but I have no clue that it is showing on that screen because I am not pretty close to that. I don't know if there is any way that I can let that particular assistant know that, hey, you know what, I cannot read the screen now, so you got to call it out, everything, whatever you're displaying in the screen. I don't know, but sometimes, I get stuck to that one aspect actually,
That's a very valid point. Contextual design is still something, we are far from, especially when it comes to voice design. Yeah.
Yep.
Michael, you were saying something earlier?
Well, I noticed that there's some questions that are factoid, so generally they're quite good at that. Although I want to come back on that point in a minute. And then there are other ones that are like, I dislike you and things like that. Now, I think in those, they probably just have fixed answers. Like Debbie said, maybe a number of them that are chosen randomly. So there's different type of processing going on depending. It must recognize a different type of question. Now, coming back to the negative ones, it looks like it's very difficult where you have some qualification, like, for example, is there a day this week that it's not going to rain? Whether I don't think it really picks up the negative there.
That do not serve meat?
Rain.
Sorry?
I was looking at the one that said, are there any restaurants nearby that do not serve meat? And Google said, I found these restaurants near you that serve meat.
Yeah, that was one of mine. Yeah.
Completely ignored it.
You know, once you're getting into a relative clause, I think maybe it, well, I mean, I guess they're probably doing intent matching here really, and, you know, the basic intent entity sort of thing. And so then it's not going to pick up relative clauses with negations in them. I mean, we need to try that out a bit more, perhaps, you know, with except for and things like that. But I guess they're not really doing full natural language understanding here.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something you can infer from these results, right?
Yeah. It's interesting though, like, how can I avoid catching COVID-19? It does seem to understand that okay.
Well, that was mine, and I suspect that that was just like bag of words. Like if I'd said anything like blah, 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 COVID-19, blah, 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 it probably would have given me the same response.
Yeah.
But it looked nice.
Yeah, I think a lot of COVID-19 questions are probably hard-coded.
So today I found one interesting feature. Like today I was visiting my chiropractor, and then when I opened the chiropractor, and then when I set my direction in Google, Assistant immediately got invoked and says, you got to take your mask along with you. I mean, they are like, so that was like immediate actually. It says that to me, you got to take your for COVID-19, so you have to take your mask. So I was like, the first time that I'm hearing, and I was like, wow, because it is like the contextual that we are talking about, right? I mean, it gave you that spontaneous feedback.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do the people who we haven't heard from want to chime in a bit?
Nancy,
Yashi,
or
Mysterious C.
There's another one that's interesting here, number 12 and 13. Is there a day this week that it's not going to rain? It does actually seem to work with that one. Well, given that the relevant search results are relevant.
I mean, that's another one where it looks like it's working, but maybe it just, if it sees rain, it just gives you the forecast. Although the Siri one looks genuinely good.
Yeah. I mean, so some of our questions are a bit contrived, really, but that other one is quite good because, you might want to plan something and you want to know, particularly here in Ireland where it rains almost all the time, we want to find a day where it doesn't.
Good luck.
So, I mean, that's the sort of thing that I would actually want to have an answer to.
Yeah.
Whereas the one about Asian food, but not Japanese, I don't know. I wouldn't worry about that so much.
Yeah, I think there are more we can test, for negation for sure, which we have not. And I'll do those and add into this list. So this list is open, you still have it. So even if you are like Balaji, you mentioned you were testing something, right? So if you guys are testing something and you found something interesting, you can still go and feed in your information in here, which will be really helpful for us as well to see, where the assistants are failing as, for negations or for anything as we start doing. So today we started with negation. We'll be doing a lot of other things as well. We'll be also looking at some ethical privacy related utterances and see how the systems respond to those as well. So yeah, so anything you find after the session also feel free to add it in here.
And I've got now Debbie's slide about, some tips on handling negation, right? Like obviously treat it as a thing, don't ignore it. Which seems so obvious, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of these systems are not acknowledging that negation is a thing they should worry about.
And really, some of those negation words are tricky, but a lot of them are not tricky at all. Like the non-spicy, there's just look for non.
Yeah.
And the not and the no and except for, without, unless, all those things that have a negative import. There's the tricky ones are the ones that are what you would say, you call implicatures, or common sense reasoning, like I'm interested in broccoli. Do you want broccoli on your list? And then you say, I have broccoli, or I'm allergic. You have to, those are really hard to handle generally. You can, of course, you can hard code those if they come up very often,
But this is
sure, for sure, take care of the easy ones.
But this last point is crucial, right? Like, are they even guided by data? Like, are these guys tracking how often these things come up? Because you just said, if it comes up a lot, you should deal with it. But that means you have to be looking.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, what these companies do is they look at the most, like used domains or the top utterances and all, then focusing on, like unique utterances and what we have to go about it.
Right. I think we need to distinguish between how the system understands or parses whatever the input, and then whether it then can find a satisfactory answer. So with nearest Asian restaurant, except not Japanese, it might actually understand that correctly, but then can't actually find an answer to that. So would we expect it then just to say, well, there isn't one nearby?
Right. That's the admit defeat, right? Like if it understands and then whatever its back end restaurant system doesn't provide it that answer, it should just say, I don't know.
Yeah, because you see, with these assistants, we don't actually see how it understands the input. Whereas if you were to go to something maybe like the Stanford parser or something, you could just see that really, and before it then executes the query. I guess there's no way of seeing the analysis here really, is there?
Not really. We just can like reverse engineer it by trying minimally different inputs, right?
Yeah. If you're using something like Dialogflow or any of the SDKs, I expect you would get some analysis of the input.
Yeah.
I think if you can ask a simple question and get a reasonable answer, then that verifies that the back end is knows what it needs to know. But if you just slightly change the wording and falls apart, then I think that's a good clue that's natural language that's letting you down.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think they probably take the view, well, let's sort of deal with the most likely sort of inputs, and some of these that are a bit convoluted, well, okay, we'll just have to let them go?
I mean, almost certainly, but then I guess my concern is how do they figure out what's a common problem, right? I mean, it's hard to look across lots of system logs for these kinds of patterns. I mean, you can search for certain words, right? But if you're saying, oh, well, like maybe it's negation in a relative clause. Well, that would take some pretty detailed error analysis to figure out how often it happens. And I suspect they don't bother to do that, right?
Yeah. Because you could imagine you would say something like, I'd like a flight to San Francisco, but not before 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, or not via Chicago, or I mean,
yeah.
And the thing that we've talked about before, some of the other sessions, is that the systems kind of train the users to simplify their utterances.
It can or it can't.
Well, they do, because I mean they train you by not working, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there was once where it did come back and to try and clarify it. I was asking about football teams that had won the cup, the big cup in England, but weren't in the top level of the Premier Division. And it said, did you want to know about teams that are not in the Premier Division that won the cup?
Wow.
And then I said yes, and then it did give the answer.
Interesting.
That's rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
I put an alarm one in there where I said set an alarm for 2:30, and what you would hope is that it would ask you AM or PM. It didn't. It set it for PM, and I said no, not PM, AM, and it just did nothing. It didn't even. And I checked, it got the ASR right and just completely ignored me, which is terrible behavior.
Yeah, but then that was a follow-up input, really, wasn't it? And it depends whether it's good up for that. Yeah.
But at least say, like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I've already moved on to something else and I'm not thinking about your alarm anymore,
Yeah.
Don't just ignore me.
Yeah, most of them would actually have checked whether it was AM or PM because they tend to do it with a sort of a slot fill-in thing, so it needs the actual number and then AM or PM for that particular time thing.
Yeah, that's what I would have expected.
Yeah.
Well, they miss on many things. So even for who should I call, I asked Alexa, who can I call? And Alexa was like, you can call all Alexa contacts in the United States, Mexico, Canada, blah, blah, blah. She was just talking. I asked the same thing to Siri and she showed me my call log. She was like, I found 26 calls. So if you are not sure what I asked, disambiguate. Ask me, like just don't give me something which doesn't make sense at all. So I feel like in some cases, they are really thinking about these kind of things. In other cases, they are not really thinking about how to handle disambiguation or how to handle situations where they are not clear about confirming and things like that.
Right.
All right, we have 2 more minutes left. Any last thoughts? Do we have the best practices slide, the last one?
That's up. Are you not seeing it?
I'm not seeing it. So, so hold on, maybe. Okay, yeah.
Is it there? Was it just hidden?
Now I can see.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Can I access the slide or the PowerPoint somewhere? Because I saw that previous graph and I just want to, in case if I want to test beyond negation, what are all the other aspects?
I think we were going to share the slides, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Shyamala, I'll send them to you as soon as we're done here.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So that's about it. And we will send you the schedule for the next one as well, and also what we'll be testing. So that will give you enough time to look through some of the best practices and come up with more creative utterances now that you know how, the throwdowns will happen. So any questions, any last minute thoughts?
Shyamala, I don't have any question, but I enrolled it through Eventbrite. Is there any other group that I should share my email so that I can directly get your email for the next event? Because I don't know if you guys have a group.
So, you can join our LinkedIn group, or I will check your email and make sure we add you into our mailing list as well. So, you get updates about our events.
Sure. I've got connected to you in LinkedIn, but I don't think that I've been part of their group actually, but yeah, I've already connected with you. Yeah, sure. And let me know if I have to share any other details so that way at least I'll be staying upbeat and see what I can contribute here.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your time.
Bye, everybody. This was fun.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Thank you.